Have you ever heard of rain that's alive? In the forgotten town of Gravebend, the sky doesn't weep water, it bleeds. People vanish, flesh falls from the clouds, and one man came to find the truth. But what he discovered should have stayed buried in the storm. This is the story of Gravebend and the God that lives above it. Don't look up. Part 1. The forecast said nothing about this. My name is Jordan Heller. I chase storms for a living. Hurricanes, blizzards, tornadoes that rip through the land like God's fingernail. But nothing prepared me for the quiet little place called Gravebend. It didn't even show up on my usual radar models. No Doppler activity, no cloud buildups. Just a redacted anomaly in a government-issued file. The note read simply, unidentified atmospheric fall, organic in texture. No injuries reported, continue monitoring. Organic. That's not a word you want attached to weather. So I packed my gear, loaded up the Subaru, and made the long drive through the Arizona desert to a town that no map seemed to care about, Gravebend. The sign at the town limits was sun-bleached and cracked down the middle. Population, 402. Elevation, 2,111 feet. Motto, written in flaking black paint, we rise by grace. It was barely noon, but the sky had that yellowed, overexposed tint like an old photograph left too long in a window. The heat was brutal, dry, baking, the kind that peels the skin off your bones by degrees. And yet, the townsfolk were smiling. Every single one of them. There were no sirens, no warning systems, no weather stations. Just a strange, lingering smell in the air, like raw meat left in the sun too long. I stopped first at a diner called The High Table. A bell jingled as I stepped inside, and the waitress, middle-aged, pink uniform, smile way too wide, looked up and said, "Another one come to see the sky bleed?" I froze. "Excuse me," I asked. She laughed, brushing flour off her apron like I'd told a joke. "You're not the first storm chaser. We get one or two every few years, but they never stay long. Gravebend's rain. It's not for everyone." "Mind if I ask what falls from the sky here?" She leaned in close enough that I could smell iron on her breath. "Meat." Then she winked. "Would you like the daily special? It's roast, local." I left before I could gag. Later that afternoon, I walked through town taking barometric readings, but nothing made sense. No wind changes, no pressure drops. Still, there was a heaviness in the air, like the sky was holding its breath. I stopped a kid riding a tricycle down the cracked sidewalk. He couldn't have been more than 7. Freckles, straw hat, a balloon tied to the back of his seat. "Hey kid," I called. "Ever see it rain here?" He nodded slowly. "It rains all the time, but there's no clouds." He smiled, a little too knowingly. "The rain doesn't come from clouds. I should have left then, but I didn't." That night, I set up my gear just outside town. Anemometer, sensors, the whole kit. The air had gone still. Too still. And then, I heard the first wet slap. Something hit the roof of my SUV. Then another. Then dozens. It wasn't hail. It wasn't rain. It was slapping, sliding, sticking. I stepped out of the car and shined my flashlight upward, and I saw it. Strips of flesh, long and curling like ribbons of prosciutto, flapping as they fell from nowhere. Wet flaps of skin, some still bristled with hair. They hit the roof with a wet splat, splattered on windows, slithered across the ground like slugs. I watched one piece land on the windshield and saw something carved into it. A smile, a stitched-on smile. I backed away slowly. The camera in my hand was shaking. I was shaking. Then something hit my shoulder. I looked down and saw a finger. Naked, boneless, still twitching. I ran. Not to the car, but into town. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd find sanity there, but the townsfolk were out, dancing. I swear to God, they were out in the street, laughing, Faces turned to the sky, catching the falling skin with open arms. Some held out bowls. One man wore a raincoat made entirely of stitched hides. They weren't afraid, they were celebrating. Stood frozen on the sidewalk. Just frozen. Then someone tugged at my sleeve. I looked down to see the same kid from earlier. He was holding something out to me, a paper umbrella. At least, it looked like paper. But when I touched it, I realized it wasn't paper at all. It was flesh, stretched thin and dried like parchment, stitched together at the seams with sinew and hair. The child smiled and said, "You'll need this tomorrow. It rains harder when it's time to choose." My voice caught in my throat. Choose what? He didn't answer. He just rode off, balloon trailing behind him through the falling skin. And above us, the sky rumbled. Not with thunder, but with something that moaned. Part 2. What grows in the clouds? Previously on Haunted Echoes, I came to Gravebend chasing a storm that didn't exist on any map. I saw it rain, skin. The locals smiled while it fell, arms open like they were catching blessings from above. A child handed me an umbrella stitched from human flesh. And now, I can't stop the feeling that something is watching me from the sky. The next morning, I woke with that umbrella still clenched in my hand. It smelled faintly of copper and spoiled milk. Some part of me hoped the whole thing was a heat-induced hallucination. That my instruments had failed. That my mind had snapped. But the dried skin on my windshield told a different story. And the strip of flesh curled on my antenna twitched when I looked at it. Twitching, like it remembered being alive. I couldn't ignore it. I needed answers. So I did what any storm chaser turned accidental horror journalist would do. I bagged the sample, and I took it to the only lab I had, my portable genetic sequencer. In the back of the SUV, I sliced off a corner of the rain and fed it into the scanner. The results came in minutes later, and they should have been impossible. Human. Not just human, identical. Every sample I tested matched the same exact genetic profile, same DNA, same sex, same origin. But there were no signs of decomposition, no damage from embalming or trauma. This wasn't old cadaver tissue dumped from planes. This was fresh, new, alive until very, very recently. But how could multiple pieces of flesh, raining over the span of hours, be from the same person and still warm? I needed perspective, history. So I went to the town's church. Gravebend's chapel sat on a knoll, watching the town like an old sentinel. The stained glass. Windows were colorless, just frosted glass warped like wax, and the bell tower had no bell, just a gaping hole, yawning toward the sky. Inside, the air was wrong, damp, muffled, like being inside a throat. I was about to call out when I heard a voice say, "You heard it too, didn't you? The wind that cries." I turned. An old man sat, near the altar, hunched, eyes clouded by cataracts, but strangely alert. A nameplate on his pew read, "Deacon Harrow." "You were here last night?" I asked. He nodded. "Been here every year since the first uplift. Can't leave. Town won't let me." "What's the uplift?" I asked, notebook already in hand. He chuckled, a rasping, papery sound. "Long time ago, there was nothing but drought and blight. Crops failed. Livestock birthed things with no eyes. The ground turned to ash, and then the sky opened, and something looked down. What did you see?" "Not what." "Who?" he said. "The Sky Father, the builder in the clouds. He said we could stay if we gave him what grew best from us." The old man tapped his chest. "Meat, blood, bone, soul." He stared up at the ceiling. It was a covenant, a flesh tithe. One body a year, lifted upward so the rest could stay. Then he whispered, "But lately it's been hungry." I asked to see records. He didn't argue. In the church's back office was a dusty shelf of handwritten books. ledgers and ceremonial documents dating back decades. I flipped through pages of baptisms. The ink was dark red, not black, not blue, red. Each name was followed by a strange sigil, looping and jagged like it was written with a broken fingernail. Then I noticed the baptism titles weren't into Christ. They were listed as baptized into the above, returned by rapture, chosen for the sky. One passage read, "Let them be water to the air. Let them rise as mist and return as rain." Another showed diagrams, human figures splayed open, surrounded by ascending arrows and phrases like marrow for the machine and blessing through dissolution. Suddenly, I heard a sound, not from the church, not from inside, but from the wind outside. It was moaning, a long, low groan, like a sick animal crawling above the clouds. I stepped out of the church. The sky was clear. No clouds, just a pale, blue dome stretching over Gravebend. But that sound, it was unmistakable. Something was alive up there. Something was moving. I walked back toward town, but the streets were empty. Not quiet, empty. Shops were closed. No cars, no children. The only sound was the distant whisper of wind that now carried a wet, slapping undertone. I felt watched, turned a corner and stopped. There, in the middle of the road, was a bone. Not buried, not weathered. Fresh, white, smooth. I knelt to examine it. It wasn't bleached by sun. It hadn't been scavenged or gnawed. It was warm to the touch, and when I lifted it in my hand, it twitched just once, like a heartbeat. And then I noticed the air smelled sweet, like iron and lilies, and droplets had started to fall. Again, red, sticky. The rain had started, and this time it was coming faster. Part 3. The Feast Above. Previously on Haunted Echoes. I came to Gravebend chasing a weather anomaly. It rained flesh, not rotten, not discarded, fresh, human, identical. The town celebrated it. Their church was hollow, their records whispered of baptisms into the sky, and the wind moaned like it had lungs. And now they say Ascension Day is coming, and I think I know what's being lifted next. I woke to bells. No sound should have echoed like that across a town this small. They didn't come from the church. Gravebend's steeple had no bell. They came from the air. I opened my window and saw the townsfolk preparing. Bunting strung across rooftops made from braided hair. Tables set with carved meats glistening under the sun. Children hanging garlands of bone. One woman was singing. Her voice was cracked, broken, like a hymn hummed through torn vocal cords. Everyone was smiling. Ascension Day. The name sounded like hope, but every instinct I had screamed funeral. I knew I had to get back inside the church. Last time, Deacon Harrow had stayed close. But this time, the church doors were unlocked. No one inside. No pews. No cross. Just an altar made from dark stone, slick with something that gleamed red. The air smelled of bile and flowers. There were symbols on the walls, looping, pulsing, some still wet. The light coming through the glass windows flickered, even though nothing outside was moving. I climbed the narrow staircase into the steeple, and that's when the stench hit me. It wasn't just rot. It was living decay, like an infected wound left open for too long. I gagged, covering my mouth, and climbed through the last hatch. The steeple wasn't built from wood or stone. It was flesh. The inside pulsed, walls ribbed like a throat, textured, like muscle peeled back from bone. The very top of the steeple was open, a gaping wound that looked straight into the sky. And from that opening, it started to rain, but not water, not just flesh. This time, it was thicker. Marrow. It hit the floor in clots, pale, syrupy, warm. Some of it steamed on contact, The rain didn't fall with the randomness of a storm. It fell in rhythm, a pulsing cadence, like a heartbeat in the sky. I heard footsteps behind me, fast and shuffling. It was Deacon Harrow. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed. "Not before the choosing." "What is this place?" I asked, staring up through the gaping hole. He didn't answer. Instead, he knelt in the rain, hands outstretched, letting the marrow slide across his palms like he was receiving communion. Are fed from above. And in return, we offer ourselves. That is the covenant. That is the cycle. Offer who? But he just whispered, "The marrow knows. It chooses." I left before he could stop me. Rushed back to my SUV, slamming the door, behind me like it would matter. Whatever was going on here, it wasn't meteorology. It was something biological, religious, otherworldly, and I had proof. Before the storm the night before, I'd sent up a drone. It had gone dark mid-flight. But maybe, just maybe, the onboard camera had caught something before it dropped signal. Pulled the footage. It started simple. A vertical climb through dust and heat shimmer. The sky was clear, but about 3 minutes in, the screen flickered. Static crackled, the lens smeared with red droplets. Then the image stabilized, and I saw it, floating above Gravebend. Mass. Cluster of bodies. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of human forms. Twisted, fused, melted together like wax figures pressed under heat. Faces with mouths open in silent screams, fingers twitching, legs folded in on themselves, a shape that breathed. It wasn't just a storm, it was a being, a colony, a skyborn god made from the town's offerings. And as the drone rose higher, the mass turned. It looked down. There were eyes in that thing, too many, all blinking, all aware, and in the center, a hole, round, sucking wind, the eye of the storm, the mouth, the throat, the altar. My name was on their ledger, and now I knew why. Part 4. They went up so we could stay down. Previously on Haunted Echoes. The rain in Gravebend isn't water, it's skin, bone, marrow. The people call it blessing. Their church is hollow and fleshy. Their rituals feed something above. I sent a drone into the storm. What it saw was a skybound mass of bodies, melted together, some alive, some still twitching. And now, I need answers, real ones. I stormed into town hall at exactly 11:43 a.m. The receptionist didn't look up. She was folding paper cranes, each one dipped in something red, something sticky. Behind her, a framed photo hung crooked. Gravebend, the town that endures. Next to it, a plaque, Mayor Arlo Crowthorne. I marched down the hall. His door was open. He stood at the window, hands behind his back, humming a low, tuneless melody. Outside, the townspeople were decorating the square, stringing up garlands made from dental floss and molars. "Mayor Crowthorne," I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He didn't flinch. "You've seen it now, haven't you?" He murmured, "The body in the sky, the god that floats, the gift that protects." "I saw the drone footage," I said. "I saw your town's secret." He turned. His face was calm, eyes tired. There was no guilt in him, only resignation. "We don't hide it, Mr. Heller. We simply let people forget. If they choose to look upward, that's on them." "What is that thing?" I asked. He sat, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Do you know what happened? Here in 1912? No. A blight swept the region. Crops rotted. Children died in their sleep with lungs full of dust. The water turned sour. We buried an entire generation in a month. And then, he exhaled. The sky split open. He slid a drawer open and pulled out an old leather-bound book, a journal. Inside were sketches of swirling masses, body-shaped clouds, red rain. He flipped to a page and tapped it. The Pact of Preservation. The Skyfather came with his mouths and his eyes and his teeth, the mayor said. He offered us a deal, survival, for tribute, human sacrifice, I said flatly. Don't reduce it to that. This isn't death, it's migration, an elevation, a transformation. And the townspeople agreed. We were desperate, he said. And we are still here, aren't we? I felt my stomach turn. This wasn't folklore. This wasn't metaphor. This was organized, ritualized, scheduled. So every year, I said, you choose someone to send into that thing. Sometimes it's volunteers. Sometimes the marrow chooses, he said. But not all stay gone, do they? The mayor looked out the window again. No, he said softly. Some come back, but not whole. He stood and walked to a cabinet, unlocking it with a brass key. Inside were jars, each filled with preserved fragments, a jawbone, a left hand, a severed tongue, each labeled with a name, each date matching an Ascension day from years past. These were our returners, the mayor said. The rain doesn't always fall clean. Sometimes the sky leaks. I stared at the jars. One of the hands had a wedding ring. Another still twitched in its fluid. Why are you telling me this? I asked, voice cracking. Because you've already been chosen, he said. I left the building shaking. My hands, my breath, nothing would still. But I had to know, had to see it for myself. So I went back to the church. The air inside was thicker than before. A heavy, humid tension that clung to the lungs like silk soaked in blood. No Deacon Harrow, no townsfolk. But on the altar sat the ledger, bound in grey leather. Its edges were soft, not warm, pliable, like skin. I opened it, each page marked with looping sigils, dates, offerings, names. Last year, Thomas Greaves. Year before, Ellen Pike. Year before that, blank. No one chosen. Sky took the priest instead. And then, the final page, tomorrow's date, just one name, Jordan Heller. My breath caught. Below the name was a tiny smear of blood. Fresh. The ink had been written, with something alive. I staggered back, the ledger dropping from my hands, pages fluttering. The church lights flickered. From the steeple, above me, came a low groan, and then a drop. Warm. Red. It splashed on my cheek. It tasted like grief. Part 5. The Flesh Engine. Previously on Haunted Echoes. Gravebend made a deal with the sky. To survive the plagues and droughts, they feed it, once a year, a chosen soul. Sometimes they come back. Pieces of them. The town calls it a blessing. The church ledger now bears my name. Tomorrow. I go up, unless I find a way to stop it. The rain started just past midnight. Not a drizzle, not a storm, a deluge. It came down in slabs, thick sheets that hit the rooftops with wet, meaty slaps. When I pressed my hand against the motel window, it came away red. It wasn't water, it was blood. I should have run, but something kept me anchored. Not courage, something worse. Curiosity. I grabbed my recorder, my flashlight, and stepped out into the rain. The streets were empty. No, cleared, as if everyone had been herded indoors. Or taken. Then I heard it. Screaming, muffled, wet. It came from the church. I crept to the side of the building. The door was wide open, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside I saw figures, hooded, faceless, dragging bodies down the aisle. Some struggled, some didn't. Each person was brought to the altar where the floor had split open. A hole gaped beneath the pulpit, wide and lined with what looked like muscle. The town's steeple didn't just point to the sky. It reached below, to a passageway, a throat, and they were feeding it. I stayed low and slipped in after the last of them. The tunnel was damp, lit by thin, pulsating strands of something organic. Veins, nerves. The walls were soft, like they'd been grown, not built. Each step squelched. The farther I went, the more the air changed, not just in smell but in feeling. It pressed against my skin, against my thoughts. It recognized me. The tunnel forked, and I followed the scent of rot and iron. Then I heard it, a sound like breath, but not from lungs, from bellows, from something mechanical and alive. I turned a corner, and the tunnel opened up. And there it was, the flesh engine, a thing beyond science, beyond sanity. It sat in a vast open chamber, lit by the bioluminescent organs hanging from the ceiling, a machine made from people, limbs fused to metal spindles, ribs used as piping, spines acting as gear columns, hearts beating in rhythm, not dead, just repurposed. Mouths chatted silently, eternally gasping. At its center, a wheel of skin and bone, turning endlessly, pumping something upward. A storm maker, a soul processor, and at the base of the machine, a chute. The townspeople were feeding it, dragging bodies down, lowering them in. I recognized one of them, Deacon Harrow. He looked up and said, "We keep the covenant, we stay dry, we stay whole." And then he smiled. The chute took the bodies whole, but not all at once. I watched one man's body split open, not by force, but invitation, like it was answering a call, skin unfolding, bones unlocking. He didn't scream. He sang. I couldn't stay. I turned and ran, slipping in the tunnel, trying not to vomit, trying not to listen to the voices rising behind me, not the townspeople, the engine. It spoke. In a tongue I didn't know but still understood. You will oil our gears. You will storm our skies. You are rain yet to fall. I burst from the tunnel and out into the open night. The church loomed behind, me, pulsing faintly like a beating organ. I staggered into the square. The sky above boiled, black, veined, circling. And then it opened. Not the clouds, something behind them. An eye, lidless, vast, slick with tears. It looked down at me. Not the town, just me. It knew, and in that moment, I knew it was hungry, and I was late for my offering. Part 6. Not all of me will return. Previously on Haunted Echoes, the town of Gravebend worships the sky. It rains flesh. It feasts on its people. The flesh engine beneath the church churns blood into clouds, meat into miracles. And now, I've seen too much. The storm has chosen me. They came at dawn, not with chains, with hands over their hearts, soft voices, tears in their eyes, like they were saying goodbye to something beloved, a funeral and a wedding all at once. They wrapped me in white, not cloth. Stretched skin, stitched tight at the seams. It smelled of perfume and salt. They didn't drag me. They walked through the streets, past the windows, past children with stitched mouths, past doors marked in blood, to the church, where the steeple had bloomed open, revealing a bone-laced platform, the Ascension altar, waiting for me. The townsfolk gathered, dozens, hundreds, faces wet with rain and reverence. Some held hands, others clutched bones like rosaries, and then the chanting began. Not words, wet coughing, sobbing, moaning. It had rhythm, pattern, a hymn made of regret, and the storm above answered. The platform lifted, up through the steeple, through the fleshy tunnel, into the sky. Rain lashed my face. I couldn't breathe. Wind howled. But underneath it, I heard voices. My mother, my sister, myself. Whispers from rain, calling me home. And then I broke through the cloud line and saw it, the Sky Father. It had no true shape, just pieces, torsos and skulls. 1,000 limbs, reaching and folding inward, teeth turning like gears, eyes blinking from beneath layers of skin. It wasn't a god, it was a memory. of everyone who had ever been given, everyone who had ever reigned, and at its center, a hollow waiting. I hovered before it, suspended by threads of nerve and sinew, and it spoke, not in sound, but sensation. You have seen the engine. You carry the knowing. You may now choose. Two visions filled my mind. First, I saw myself braking the engine, pouring salt into its guts, burning the wet tunnels, watching the steeple collapse, the storm vanishing, Gravebend drying out, and with it, wilting, crops dying, throats parched, children coughing up blood, the town crumbling back to dust, saved from the sky, doomed by the ground. Second, I saw myself sinking into the engine, becoming part of its core, my ribs clicking into place, my heart setting tempo, my eyes feeding vision into the clouds. The rain would continue, but it would be me, every drop, a piece of my memory, and the town would endure, and so I made my choice. I'm not proud of it, but I'm still here. Sort of. Some nights I remember my name. Other nights I remember being wind. I remember the moment the sky swallowed me, the feeling of splitting, stretching, melting into something wider, not dead, just weather. And now, Gravebend waits again. A new name will be carved, a new offering prepared. But I remain inside the sky, inside the storm. I see you when you look up. I feel you when you raise your umbrella. A broken, static-filled radio broadcast. It's Jordan's voice, but warped, slowed, distant. Jordan, this is Jordan Heller, coming to you live from high above. Gravebend. Forecast for tomorrow. Sinew gusts. Rainfall 80%. Skin expected to thicken by dawn. Keep your umbrellas close, Gravebend. It's going to be a wet one. Gravebend still stands, but the rain never really stopped. And sometimes, when the clouds roll in, you can still hear Jordan's voice whispering through the static. If this story chilled you to the bone, leave a like. It feeds the storm. Share it with someone brave enough to look up. And don't forget to subscribe to Haunted Echoes for more stories you'll wish you never heard. We'll be waiting, right above you.